Hello. Welcome back to my channel. I am Monet and you're watching Life is Monet. So in the month of March, I was crazy busy. I had a trip to Washington, D.C. for my graduate degree program, and every single day of that trip was incredibly busy. And I basically got no reading done while I was there. As soon as I got back from DC, I started a new job at a nonprofit, and that was an incredibly busy week. And then for those of you who don't know, I am a military spouse. So there were a lot of things happening with my husband's schedule in the Army and too many moving pieces. And basically I got no reading done. I am behind on my TBR and have been for 2 months. This is the second month in a row. I'm gonna try to get a hold and get a grip on my life again, get back in control of my time management skills. And so for the month of May, if I am unable to catch up on the books from March and April that I was supposed to read as a part of my TBR but did not, if those books are still unread going into May, then I will not have official May TBR. It will just be to catch up on the books that I am behind on. However, I still got a few books read in the month of March, and so we're going to talk about those. One of the first books that I read in the month of March was Gallant by V.E. Schwab, and I do have an entire vlog of me reading this. It was supposed to be like a 24-hour reading vlog, and it was a fail. I did enjoy Gallant much more than I anticipated. This was me taking a chance on reading more like gothic type books because I don't have a favorite and I haven't read a lot of them, and so V.E. Schwab is just a writer that I find to be so talented and well versed and like able to switch hats, and I wanted to see what she could do with a gothic type book. And so my expectations were virtually non-existent because I didn't have a book to put up against this one. I was just reading it and like just trying to get a feel for my taste and what I like and what I don't like. And reading gothic books right now feels like navigating blindly because usually something about it either doesn't feel right or I start to lose interest or it's underwhelming. But I was pleasantly surprised with this one. It was a gothic book. Like, I've read other books that were labeled as gothic and they usually had like a gothic element or like a gothic feel, but this one was dark and haunting on every single level. Even the way that descriptive language was used throughout the book, the way that colors were rolled out, the personality traits of our characters, how sinister they could be. I just felt like V.E. Schwab put a heavy amount of significance on so many aspects of this book and gave you goth all the way through instead of depending on like a gothic element to carry the book. So clearly I'm not the best person to give gothic recommendations or anything like that, but of the ones that I've read, I pleasantly enjoyed this. I want to read more books from V.E. Schwab. I want to read more gothic books, and going into this, like I said, I didn't have a gothic book to compare anything else to, but this became that. So unfortunately, this is now going to be the book that I pit everything against. And the people that I know that do read gothic reads, they all really loved Gallant, and so I'm guessing that makes it like top tier gothic. And so yeah, the bar is set really high for my expectations. Then the second book I read was Graceling. This is a YA book, and this was another one that like I was surprised at how much I enjoyed. And with this book, I found that I did not have to do that. It was YA for sure, but I feel like it was very, very enjoyable for an older age group. I never felt like I was reading a YA type story. In fact, there is a romantic element in this book. There are some heavy things that happen in this book and just overall like heavy things that the author explored and discussed in the story that I felt like it was very significant for a YA. This one had several hard decisions that our characters had to make. We're following a main character who's a Graceling, and her grace is to be able to kill people, and I feel like the author balanced her very well between her embracing what it means to just be this natural born killer and also exploring other things that might not necessarily be her grace but she's still good at. So the series is a little asynchronous in which you follow a different character in this world and they're going through different things, and so the next book will follow another character like that was kind of mentioned and it goes through that. So they essentially act as like little mini standalones because it's not a synchronous story all the way through. However, I really enjoyed Bitter Blue and I don't think that Bitter Blue is the next book in this series, so I'm anxious to pick up the next one and also to get to Bitter Blue because I just thought that she was a very interesting character and I'm very interested to see her story. So I am very glad that I enjoyed this book because I already own all 4 and I'm in it for the long haul. So the next book I read was Last Argument of Kings. This is the final book in the First Law trilogy, and as usual, I have feelings about the series. I started reading these books maybe last November. I want to say November, December, something like that. So if you've been watching my videos, you know that I had very conflicting feelings about the series and I was a little thrown off at how we were tossed into the story because there is no synopsis. There's really not a clear objective or plan, and you're essentially just following random characters as they do random things, and you're supposed to just understand what's happening in this world. You don't get a map. You don't get any type of index to make it easier for you to follow the characters, and you don't get a clear objective. I could not for the longest time tell you what this series is about because at the end of book 2 I still had no idea what the series was about or what it was we were actually supposed to be doing. You quite literally go into this very, very blind with a little amount of information, and you're just like, what is the point of all of this? And I was told repeatedly that book 3 was going to be worth it and it would all make sense, it would click into place, it would be amazing and fantastical, and this book was good. It was good. I do want to state that I did enjoy this book. However, for this to be the finale for such a ambiguous series where I didn't know what was happening for the longest time, this, as strong as it was not strong enough to come up or to compete with that. I know that like people must be cringing in their seats, but the amount of buildup into the 3rd book, like usually with a series finale, there's already a heavy amount of buildup because you've been watching characters do certain things and aim for certain things and try to, you know, accomplish certain goals. And now this is the big bang, the series finale. And so there's already a heavy amount of anticipation. And when you're going into this book, when you don't even know what it was, our goal was for the first 2 books, I expected more. I really expected more. And so I feel like if the dichotomy of the first 2 books wasn't the way that it was, I would have enjoyed this book so much more. But as the ending to a series that for the longest time I had no fucking clue what was going on, it was not enough. Then I read for a vlog that is up on my channel, books that were picked for me by Monty. That included My Brother's Husband, Volume 1 and 2, Vagabonds, and The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I'm going to go over those very briefly because I do have very in-depth thoughts in that vlog that you guys can click the link above and go and watch. The first book that I read for the vlog was The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. There was a lot of social commentary in the story that I ended up enjoying. However, it was it was overloaded with unnecessary details. And I don't mean that in an overdramatic way. I mean, like, quite literally, there has to be a minimum of 50 pages in that book that is just unsensical descriptions of things that's not even relevant to the story. And so that constantly took me out of the story. And this is another genre where like I don't have a lot to compare to. I don't always read mystery books, and so I don't really have a favorite mystery that comes to mind. But with this being the first mystery that I've read in a while, I think the last mystery that I read was The Woman in the Window, which is like a mystery thriller. It's mostly mystery. I found that The Woman in the Window was way too damn long and boring and had unnecessary details. And I don't know if that's something that mystery books just seem to share, but I am now hesitant to pick up a mystery book that is over 400 pages because the last 2 to 3 mystery books I've picked up that was over 400 pages, I found could have been cut down and should have been cut down. And that could just be a me thing because I also don't like romances that are over 400 pages. Unless it's like a very slow burn. Like if we're doing a slow burn, I could probably tolerate it if other things are happening in the book. But for mystery books, I find that the unnecessary details about a character's life that has nothing to do with the mystery usually bothers me. And with The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, we're following multiple characters, but two of our main characters are investigating a missing woman of another family. And so you're getting all of the messy details from this rich family whose family member has gone missing for the last 40 years. But then you're also getting the messy details of the two main characters that we're following. And I just found that it was too much for me. I would have been satisfied with just the messiness of this rich high-class family or just the messiness of our main characters' lives. But the more that I got invested into the mystery, then the more annoying all of the other side details became, because at some point I was just like, let's get back to the mystery. So ultimately, there were so many things I enjoyed about this book, but it really should have been cut down. Then I read My Brother's Husband, Volume 1 and Volume 2, and I really enjoyed this. This is another one that had heavy commentary throughout the story. The exploration of our main character getting to know his brother's husband in his brother's absence because his brother has passed away, and him being a single father, a single divorced father. I just enjoyed so many things about the book, and I actually wanted there to be more volumes. I wish that there was more. So if you know of any other graphic novels out there or mangas out there that is similar to My Brother's Husband, leave them down in the comment section below, because I do want to read more books like that. And then the last book that I read for this vlog was Vagabonds, and I have not found a adult sci-fi hitter in a long time. As of late, I want to say like the last 2 years, some of the sci-fi that I have enjoyed the most has been YA, which is surprising because YA everything else has been letting me down, especially YA fantasy. Unfortunately though, for adult sci-fi, there's usually something that like significantly impacts my reading experience. And so with Vagabonds, this is a book that I DNF'd like 3 times. And there was just something about the book that made me want to go back to it. It had a really classic feel to it, and I do feel like this is something that we'll appreciate to the level of a classic in the future, and I do explain why I feel like that. But when I was not reading the book, all of the residual effects that the book left with me on my mind had my mind thinking and turning, and I'm like, I enjoyed so much of what I took from the book, but I did not enjoy reading the book. It is a book that I feel like I would discuss with someone. I would love to talk about, especially in like an academic setting. There's so many elements to this book that is worthy of dissection, and if it was to be adapted, I would be the first one in the theater to see it, but to read it again, you couldn't pay me. You couldn't pay me. Then I read New Age of Empire, which I loved, okay? Like, I loved this book. This probably took the spot for like my favorite nonfiction ever. I took a heavy amount of like notes and like highlights throughout the book, and I feel like I would read this again. I know for a fact that I will read this again. This author is like, let's go back a little bit about me personally. I have an undergrad degree in history, and the reason why I decided not to pursue history at a graduate level was because there were so many things that I learned in history that gave me foresight, and I have a rather analytical mind, and I felt like in terms of current day events, too often we depend on historical distance. We have to wait to get 20 to 30 years away from an event before we can look at that and like, haha, this was wrong. Let's clearly point this out. I feel like as a society, and a lot of times in America specifically, we lack foresight. And there was something about focusing only on history that had me a little unsettled, because I don't feel like, as much as I love history, you need to wait 20 to 30 years before you can point out that something might not be a good idea, or to point out the lasting domino effects that a decision might make. And so that is why I switched to like current events, and I have been loving taking what I know from history, but also like what I learned from history, which is to be able to have this foresight and to look future, and being able to like contribute to it now, talk about it now, and not have to wait 10 to 15 years before I can write this huge dissertation on it. And so I know that that's like a mouthful, but that is essentially why I love this book, because the author had so many points made in this book that directly relates to like how I see the world and what I think about certain events and things that need to be talked about now, that need to be addressed now, and not 20 to 30 years in the future. So for this book to have so much historical context, and like it's literally like 250 pages, it's so short, but he takes you from like colonialism and slavery and fast forwards you to the future, but he's painting clear pictures and like weaving threads. And so like if you're someone who just doesn't have like that foresight, because I mean a lot of us don't, you'll be able to see a direct correlation between the past and the present, and even have a little bit of a foresight to be like, this is gonna have these effects in the future. And so that makes this book worth way more than the $29 that I paid for it, because you don't find that level of like context in a book every day. You just don't, especially like in such a digestible method. It's short. The audiobook was so good. I think the author did the audiobook himself, and I managed to snag that from my local library. So yeah, I truly enjoyed this book. It is one that I will definitely read again. It is required reading for my children, and if I was a teacher in school, it would be required reading for my students. The next book I read was an anticipated pre-order, and that is Booth. This follows the family of John Wilkes Booth from his father arriving in America all the way up to his assassination of Abraham Lincoln. The author made a conscious decision not to follow John himself. John had several siblings and a very interesting family dynamic and just upbringing that the author chose to explore. And so I learned quite a few things about the Booth family as a whole, but she put in like her author's note at the end of the book that John Wilkes Booth is heavily researched, and he has a lot of literary arts that has been dedicated to him. And so she did not want to give him any more dedication because she felt like that had been done enough. She wanted to give voice and to pay respect to his family members, because they are very often left out of the narrative of John Wilkes Booth. And I think that this is another book that I would say has a gothic element to it, because of how dark and like melancholy the author chose to write the book. In fact, the writing is very similar to that of The Bear and the Nightingale. So if you enjoyed that writing dynamic or writing aspect, I think that you would enjoy John Wilkes Booth, because it's written the same way. But in The Bear and the Nightingale, the author uses literary mechanics to make it more of like a fairy tale. In this book, the same mechanics are used to make it like gothic, melancholy, depressive. There is a lot of representation for mental illness in here. And there was just this steady pulse of like sadness throughout the book as I was reading it, which I did end up enjoying. And you do get little snippets from Abraham Lincoln. So you're following John's family, and so you get to see him grow up through the eyes of like his mother, his brother, his sibling, if he gets along with them, if he doesn't get along with them. But she is painting the stage for the end of the book, because you do get little snippets, like just 1 or 2 paragraphs of the current event in America, and things that are basically becoming a catalyst to the Civil War and how Abraham is handling it. And not just as a president, but like the stuff that is happening in Abraham's personal life, like the death of his first wife, the death of his son, his second wife being sick, him deciding that he probably doesn't want to marry his second wife. And so I feel like she did such a good job. The book is like so perfectly written to tie in all these elements, and you get a full story without actually having to follow John himself. He is a distant character in the book. You see him, you know that he's going to be relevant in the end, but she forces you to spend time with all the other things that was happening in his life, that was around in his world, while he does his own thing. So the second to the last book that I managed to finish was The Stationery Shop. This was an anticipated 5-star read for me, and it did not disappoint. I did end up giving this book 5 stars. I enjoyed probably the most the dynamics of the characters that this author chose to write, because it was very hard to not see the fault and to the detriment of each character in the book as the author was telling this story. Everyone has these characteristics about them that leads them to make decisions that come across as flaws, but it's really hard to paint anyone as a villain. Everyone in this book, every character that we're following in this book has things that are directly affecting their life, directly affected their upbringing and some of the traumas that they have to face for the past. And there's these two youth that we're following. There's two different timelines, but there's two youth who are like in love and they want to get married, but every single person of influence and power around their lives has their own problems that they're dealing with, and they're projecting onto these youth. And these youth also have problems of their own. And so you have the timeline in the future where they come together and try to figure out what happened, why they never ended up getting married, and how the effects of the Iranian Revolution has affected their lives. And it's just, there were so many moving pieces to the story, and I found that I enjoyed every single chapter. I did not love one timeline over the other. Even the little parts of the story where we're following other people, I was perfectly content to just pace myself through this book, to read it and to just soak up all of the feelings and emotions that was happening. Even in the 50-year gap where they had not communicated in a long time, they were each dealing with some very hard things in their lives. This missed feeling of love and marriage and happiness, but also missed chances at healing for everyone. And how people saw the Iranian Revolution, the hopes and the dreams and aspirations that they had for the revolution, and then the direction that it ended up taking. And I will be reading, I don't know if the author has any more books, but if I find it, I'm going to be reading it. And then the last book that I read in April was The Mad Ship. This is the second book in the Live Ship Traders by Robin Hobb. And the first book really impressed me. I read the Farseer trilogy. I enjoyed so many things about it, but it wasn't like a favorite. When I say that Robin Hobb was in her bag, she was in her coin purse when she wrote this second series. Like, when you hear the fans and the people who just love and admire Robin Hobb, this series is what you expect. Okay, I really enjoyed it. I'm not someone who loves pirate stories, but for this series, for us to be centered around being at sea and like pirates for like the whole series is a shock to me that I am enjoying it as much as I am, because usually I would get bored. One of the things that I loved about the Farseer trilogy was Regal. He is one of the most villainous villains I've ever seen. He's always 2 to 3 steps ahead, and he was winning for so long in the book that I nearly lost all hope of anyone being able to actually defeat Regal in the first series. Like, the clock was running down and I'm like, Regal is really like 32-0, seriously undefeated. In this series, however, even though she's done some of my most favorite antagonist work, she has decided to do something different with her villains in this story. She gives them humanity and humility. And so it makes it harder to really truly hate them or admire them the way that I did Regal in the Farseer trilogy. However, there's still characters in this book that I really hate, but just that moment of like uncertainty and like that moment of like make it or break it, every single character in this story comes to that point, whether they are an antagonist or protagonist in the story. And that is something that I did not really see in the Farseer trilogy, because the protagonists were constantly beat down and had to get back up, and it was just depressive and sad, and the antagonist was just always winning. And so it's different in this series, where it doesn't matter if you are the hero or the villain of the story. Everyone has that crossroads breaking moment, and you just feel more than just one emotion towards them. And as much as I love Regal from the Farseer trilogy, I have to say that I really enjoy the shift in dynamics and the change in this series. And those are all of the books that I read in the month of March. Check back at the end of next month, and hopefully I will have caught up on my TBR. And if not, we're going to be taking a pause in the month of May, like I said earlier, where I can get caught up. Thank you for watching. If you've made it to the end of this video, I truly appreciate you, and I will see you guys next time.